Welcome back to Alan Talking. The term woke. Boy, has that gotten a bad reputation. The right wing has certainly used its prowess in political spin to make that a bad word. Well, woke is not a bad word. As a matter of fact, the original concept of the word is social awareness. Now, we can go to the extremes here and give you the origin and how it's evolved over time. But for our purposes today, I want to talk about how the right wing has co-opted and made something that is really good into something that they make you think is bad. Okay? Now, for the indignities that the African American population in this country has suffered from the origins of slavery right up to the civil rights movement into the modern day era. You might be a little angry about what was going on with all the killings by police officers of unarmed black civilians. Now, I am not categorically saying that the police are bad. There are bad people in every occupation. There's bad teachers, there's bad firemen, although I don't think I've ever seen one of them. But the gist of it is this. Bad lawyers, maybe even bad judges, bad nurses, and it depends on how you define bad, but there are people who do things on a regular basis that are bad, and woke is just the opposite of that. It is citing that badness that the right wing has embraced. They take something that is positive and turn it into a negative because it fits their underlying purpose, which is control of the masses. That's what they want to do. They want to have their ideas and their priorities be everyone's ideas and everyone's priorities, and they are right inherently, and we are wrong inherently, and that is simply not true. The African American community has suffered in the United States since the beginning of slavery, okay? Right through the civil rights movement, right to all the killings of all the young black men and women by bad police officers. Now, let me just say straight here, I do not think all police officers are bad. I do not. I don't think all teachers are bad. There's always some bad apples in the bunch. However, unarmed civilians being killed for minor infractions by armed police officers is a problem and needs to be addressed. What's good about woke? Well, there's a lot of good about woke. It means that people who have been traditionally oppressed in our society have an awareness of that oppression, and they're trying to bring that awareness to the public at large and also to their oppressors. And that's what inspired the civil rights movement in the 60s. It inspired the feminist movement in the early 70s. It inspired the gay rights movement in the late 60s, right into the early 70s, to say, wait a minute here. Who do you all think you are, and how do you have the nerve to think what you think about us? You're the ones who've been in charge for centuries. The only way they can maintain power is to project their innermost negative feeling onto things that really are positive and stir people up on false pretenses to get them to vote for them. Because the truth is, if you look at the history of the United States since the World War II, the last 80 plus years or so, all the improvements to daily American life have been fueled by woke ideas. It used to be okay to denigrate gay people, to call them, as Anita Bryant said, degenerate homosexuals. She didn't want degenerate homosexuals teaching her children. That's what personally moved me more than anything else in my life.
From an orange juice drinking
beauty queen.
Yeah.
Okay? Listen, I didn't have anything against Anita Bryant personally. I know that her belief system was handed to her on a platter by her family. And I've talked in an episode about how my belief system was handed to me on a platter. The modern world, since the 60s, has woken up to the repression and ill treatment of minorities in this country. Remember that Hitler came to power on the backs of him denigrating and dehumanizing people of Jewish faith. Today, in modern society, we do the same thing to the illegals who enter the country. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that people should come into this country illegally, but they come in here, they get jobs, they work hard, and Trump wants to kick them all out. And who's going to do the jobs that they're doing? We need these people here in our country to still pick the cotton that Americans don't want to pick. What's sorely lacking in the discussion is the recognition of these people's humanity. And instead, we criticize them for taking away American jobs when they're doing jobs that most Americans either won't do for one reason or another or can't do. And they also hire these people because they don't have the same obligations that lawfully employed people have to defend themselves in a work situation. And so you fall off a ladder when you're working as an immigrant. You go to the hospital, you get treated by the hospital emergency room if you're lucky. But the employer has no obligation whatsoever in terms of disability. It just doesn't happen. They're expendable. They're viewed as being expendable, and they're not expendable. And this country is going to find it out pretty soon with the onslaught of people leaving this country because they're afraid to live here. And there aren't going to be people out there to do the jobs, the menial jobs, the housekeeping jobs, the labor in the fields. The reason they left the country to begin with was because American labor costs were too high, and they decided to build cars and sneakers and everything else elsewhere because it was cheaper, and it provided the American marketplace with cheap goods because of cheap labor. That's Alan talking. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing, and keep the comments coming in.